This is some work I've been doing actually with Lukas from Lucerne and from Meierhofer, looking at value propositions based around digital twins within the context of servitization. This is part of a larger study that we've been doing with 10 different partners funded by InnoSwiss in Switzerland. Really, how can we develop new value propositions within the servitization context? That's the problem that we've been looking at in this case. We've taken 10 cases and taken them on a standardized basis all the way through, and some of the slides are a little bit cluttered because of that, but I want to say go and have a look at the paper. You can see how we've segmented the value propositions that we've got there that have been supported by the digital twins. The aim there was really to identify what the contribution to the value proposition that the digital twin made, and this was a little bit unfair question that I asked Oliver yesterday. I said, so could you have done it without the digital twin? That's always my question. Is there another way really of delivering it? So the motivation, we want to understand how to design value propositions based around digital technologies that support servitization. A lot of the time I've seen a lot of publications on digital twins talking about the technology, and I really want to talk about the application and how they enable us to do things. So first of all, I want to get back to digital twins. What the heck is a digital twin? We've been through the literature. I've got to thank Oliver for this. He's been trawling through the literature and been pretty tough on me. The digital twin is a mapping of all the components of the product life cycle using physical data, virtual data, and interaction between them. I quite like that, but it didn't quite fit what we were looking at. So we were looking at something a little bit more simple, I think. Digital twin is a digital model of a real object or component with a purpose to provide situation-specific advice to the actors in the business ecosystem. Being a little bit more specific there and a little bit more business orientated there rather than the technology orientation. And I think this is important because Jörg had some questions about digital twins from colleagues at ZHHV who said, you'll never manage to do it. It's too complicated because you need to know everything. And basically we've been trying to cut corners and put black boxes around things that we need to know or we don't need to know. And I think that to me is really important. So the background, we're trying to bridge then the technical and the commercial layers together. And I've got the product life cycle. I think some of you know I like it and don't like it all at the same time. A lot of people use it. Siemens particularly like it. I think particularly for servitization, it doesn't focus enough on the middle of life, and particularly the interactions between middle of life, end of life, and actually the beginning of life, because we live in complicated systems. I've also put in the Purdue model from the enterprise down to individual components within it. So really our strong focus here was trying to develop the value co-creation over the life cycle between technical and commercial layers and to cheat in places where we didn't have sufficient data or sufficient feeds. So how did we do this? Case selection, this came from the InnoSwiss project that we had. We're actually very lucky there. We have, as I said, we had 10 partners in that project, and we have a lot of cases to choose from. And how did we choose them? We kind of listed them all out and then chose our favorite ones, to be honest. The ones that we felt were different, the ones which were not standard cases. The purpose was identified of the case. What is this? What is the simple value proposition that we think it's delivering? We then went into detailed case descriptions across 5 dimensions. Then we put them all together with 3 dimensions, and then we discussed them. Very standardized process to try and get the lessons from it. And I want to focus on 3 here. We've only got 15 minutes, and I don't want to keep you here all afternoon, which I could do. The server room temperature management and control using the digital twin. We've tried to get the purpose written down here very clearly. The purpose of this twin is to improve overall equipment uptime. So it's an availability-based twin and provide further business stability through the equipment risk mitigation. There we have some comments on the value. The value accrues there from the operational support, temperature stability and routine reporting. It's trying to make the operation easier for people. And it was quite an interesting one. We had another one, which was a breakdown support for twins, which to me was a much more traditional PSS OEM type thing. We have a company called called ShipTech in Lucerne, which manufactures ships. And they go on the a.bigdeli, and they're also providing asset management for other people. And the twin there mimics the ship. So it's a very traditional type of thing. The third one that we've picked up here, because we think they all fit into different groups, was the footfall around public transport interchanges, railway stations. But anybody who's been to Switzerland understands how complicated those railway stations can be. And here, really, the value came from focusing on traveller safety and efficiency of going through the stations. And actually, timing-wise, it's been absolutely fantastic with COVID, because we've been able to make people a little bit wider within the modelling technique and see how that impacts on the rush hour situation that we're in. The other 10 cases you can look at in the paper, really very interesting, different cases that we're taking. So what did we do? We list them out. The cases, we gave them very simple descriptions of titles. We looked at the business support functions, and this was from the value chain. Which parts did it impact? We were trying to focus on linking different supported business areas there. Service classification, Christian's work, we find it really helpful to understand where and why it was helping people. I think you can get to more detailed granularity in that, but it really provided 4 blocks which allowed the industrial partners there to understand what they were looking at. Life cycle, high-level life cycle, and then the detail from the PLM. Again, very interesting, because in cases we were actually integrating beginning of life, middle of life, footfall. If you're redesigning a new station or designing a new station, it impacts majorly on the middle of life. That's a very, very complicated system. The environment that we were looking at, we went through this from Peter's, and we went through what are they? Is it smart products? Is it system of systems? Basically, we came to the conclusion a lot of it is actually system of systems here. Very, very interesting the way that that comes together. And then the capabilities and the level of delegation that we were given. Was it monitoring, optimization, or monitoring and really trying to break that down to understand what it was actually doing for us. Again, each one, simple case description against each one. Putting them together was very interesting. We started to try and identify what the measure of value creation was. This is kind of the measure of success that we have. We have a tunnel drainage system there. Tunnel availability was the high-level measure of success there. And lack of travel disruption. If you imagine a tunnel, it absorbs a lot of snow. It gets leaks in it. Now, how long can we keep it open if we have a failure on a pump, say, or on an air on a ventilation system? Digital supported value proposition. A little bit more detailed there, really on what the value proposition is doing for us in simple terms. Trying to keep it down to one sentence, which is actually very, very difficult. A lot of the time we discovered that actually the questions and support mechanisms of the digital twin were actually one of the most useful things that we had. And then I measured some servitization context. And what we began to see here was a breakdown of servitization. I don't need to have the OEM on some of this. The owner can lead it. I have a mixture of assets from different OEMs. The individual OEM becomes a pain. As opposed to in cases like the ships where the OEM could lead it. And that to me broke down some of the problems I've seen with digital. Who is in control and who is in the lead? So moving on to the discussion, we saw the digital twin as a trainer, as a simulator, as a trainer. So you could actually use it as a PlayStation, if you like, to see what to do and to train the operations teams and to learn what the reactions would be. I felt that that was quite an interesting outcome for us. Not one that we went in looking for, but one that actually jumped at us and bit us quite hard. We saw the other one, particularly on the server room. It's almost a cyber co-worker and operates within a role, within a defined role with delegations of authority. If this happens, you look after it. If you go outside, put your hand up and come and tell me. The other opportunity that it had and provided us was what we were kind of expecting as a decision support tool, as a what if. What if I do this? How does it work? What happens? So we got 3 very different types of digital twin behaviors in there and different ways that they could help us. Some with servitization and some without. Theoretical and practical contributions. Existing frameworks often focus just on the technical, and we need to move it into the business area. 10 cases are not fully compliant with OEM-led servitization context, but are with complicated product service systems, digitally enabled. When we started to shape the twin using the lens of service dominant logic, we started to see new things. And I would recommend that you actually go and have a look at that and see how it helps value co-creation and how it captures the knowledge within the ecosystem. We needed often to understand the big problem space and then build up a small value proposition for a small area of it. Practically, you've seen it, they help with decision-making, training, automation. The schemes can be seen that we now have as blueprints, yet we still feel that we need to industrialize this. Digital twin can be an enabler for service-based value propositions. In conclusion, we can bridge life cycles, value propositions that support management decision-making are clearly there. Value propositions allow for delegated decision-making. That was something that kind of caught us out, quasi-automation. 2 of the value propositions that we saw supported training. You can see the other 10 cases if you want. Recommendations, bigger, wider ecosystems, really, really important. Firms need to learn to embrace multiple points of view. It's not just the manufacturer's point of view or the user. In fact, the user point of view, I have to then ask who is the user, who is the beneficiary. We need better language around that, particularly when we've got a lot of value co-creation going on in the development stage and in the operational phase. And we really do need an operational framework here to support the firms to develop this and implement it. My recommendations are we need more work on digitally enabled PSS and servitization, really to mash it up to understand how it comes together. It is another paradigm shift, and it's allowing us to accelerate things and change things. The integration is not trivial and does have unexpected results. Thank you very much for listening. The slides are on SlideShare if you want. They're also, the paper is in the paper book. Thank you very much, Ali.